Sometimes photography doesn't go to plan. I wasn't expecting to see a sunrise of any sort this morning. Sometimes when things don't go to plan, that can be a very, very good thing. Well, good morning and welcome to another video. As you can see, it is absolutely glorious today. I mean, just look at this, it is unbelievable this morning. So last night when I watched the weather, it said that today we were predicted to have really thick fog for most of the morning. But as you can see, this location, absolutely no fog. When I was driving here this morning, I was coming over a few hills and saw in some valleys there was some thick fog lingering. I was tempted to stop there and try and find a composition, even though this is a location I had in mind with a nice lake. I'm glad I've had a good sunrise. I wasn't expecting to catch a sunrise this morning, but I think we might still get a little something. Check this out. So, as you can see, I've changed location. I was hunting for the mist, but unfortunately, it hasn't materialised this morning. All the weather apps said that there was going to be really thick fog this morning, like everywhere I looked. So I picked my location out at a lake where I thought there'd be nice still water. I'm so glad I got that nice sunrise because the fog has just completely disappeared. It said it was supposed to linger until 10 o'clock. It is now 8 o'clock and as you can see, no mist whatsoever. That's how it goes sometimes though. Weather is really hard to predict even with modern computer models and everything like that. So fog is never guaranteed. I haven't had any this year and I was really, really hoping I'd get some this morning. And don't tell my boss, but I've taken the day off work today to come and photograph fog. I mean, I am self-employed, so I would just be telling myself off in a mirror.
How dare you have a day off to do something you love and try and enjoy your life?
The photographer's plight. But I am not disappointed. And it's never a waste of time going out to do photography, even if the conditions aren't what you expected. The very fact that you've gone out to do photography is what really matters. And I've now got a great opportunity to practice some woodland photography. So I think I'll probably try and share a couple of tips with you on that instead today. So one of the hardest things with woodland photography is getting a simple composition. Woodlands are so complicated and messy and trees are so jagged that you can really very easily fall into the trap of taking a picture of just a mess. I see it all the time in woodland photography where people just take a picture because they think it looks cool because there's loads of gnarly trees, but there's no real subject to it. So one tip that can really help you to think about simplifying your images and getting a good composition is balancing both sides of your frame. Now here you can see we've got this nice path that's just covered in these burnt orange leaves and these backlit trees on the right hand side. There's 3 trees in a row that sort of complement each other and are evenly spaced out. Now what I can do is balance these trees with this path. That makes it a much simpler image. If I was just to take a picture of the trees or the path, then it would sort of be simple, but there would be no balance in the picture. Whereas by doing this, you've got one on one third and one on the other third. You get a balanced composition and there's an actual point to the picture and not just an absolute mess. So I'm going to take these handheld first to get my composition, but it's quite a slow shutter speed because I want to get a good wide depth of field. So my handheld shots will be a little blurry, so I'm going to get my tripod out and nail this shot. Listen to how quiet this river is. Normally filming next to a river is really hard. You have to speak up to talk over it, but it's just moving so smoothly here. Absolutely beautiful. That's what attracted me down here in the first place, just the calmness of the water. I love autumn days like this, where it's crisp and clear, blue skies, and just really calm, not a breath of wind. Car was all iced up this morning, so I had to defrost it. Ideal conditions for fog. It just didn't turn up. The next bit of advice I'd give you with woodland photography, if you're struggling to find good compositions, is to really look for details. Really zoom in on something. Don't be afraid to, in fact, put your zoom lens on and pick out real details in the scene. Just behind you, there's these lovely orange leaves that are catching the sunlight right now, set against a blue, cold backdrop. The contrast of colour really makes it stand out. And if you were to try and get the whole tree in, it would be a messy, ugly scene. Whereas zooming in on those details of those orange leaves really makes them stand out, and it gives you a nice composition that you can work with. There's probably quite a few people who disagree with me on this point, because technically it's not woodland photography. It's, I don't know what you want to call it, arborist photography, not botanical photography, leaf photography. Normally woodland photography is wide scenes that you get lots of detail in. Nobody ever really stood out by just copying everyone else, did they? I don't think you should be afraid to experiment. I don't think you should be afraid to share your work that other people won't like as well. I do it all the time. As you know, if you're a regular viewer of my channel, there's so many times I've put up pictures I know are going to get me trolls in the comments. And I like to share my bad work as well, to show that it's really common to produce bad work. I don't think this is bad work. I think I'm going to quite like these pictures when I get back. I won't know until I've edited them and properly seen them, but that's going to be my next point as well. The importance of experimentation in photography. And I'll explain why now. So we've got this really interesting tree here that's just getting backlit by the sun really nicely. And I'm going to break a lot of rules with this picture because it's really important to experiment. Let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to severely underexpose it, probably by about 3 stops. And I'm going to narrow down my aperture to beyond what is acceptable. f32. Tell me if you've ever seen somebody take a picture on YouTube at f32, and you'll see why now. Now you'll notice that's a very dark picture, which is backlit by the sun, but the sun's created like a starburst. That's what happens when you have a narrow aperture. Now normally you'd only need to go down to S or f22 for that, but I've taken it to the extreme because I want to experiment by severely underexposing it, and by getting that starburst from an aperture that is far too narrow. It creates a very different image. It might not be a portfolio image, but it is different. There's a very real risk when it comes to your photography that you sort of just imitate everybody else. I've talked in another video about why it's important to copy other photographers when you're learning, because it's one of the easiest ways to get good, is by just copying what other people do. That's what I did. And feel absolutely free to copy me whenever you want. You might not want to with a lot of my photos, but if you find something that I do that you want to copy, then you absolutely have my permission to do that. As long as it's not exactly the same. If you do, then make sure you credit me for that. But if I take a correctly exposed picture of this now, I'll make it HDR so that we get everything in. It'll be a handheld HDR, but I'll go on aperture priority mode, open up the aperture, keep it ISO 100. So this is what the camera thinks that picture should look like. Now here are those two pictures side by side. You tell me which one you think looks better. And neither of them might be particularly good pictures, but by experimenting, I've produced something that's different to other people. And it's really fun to experiment as well, do different stuff. You don't have to share your experimental work. If you do it just for you, then it adds a new element to your photography, and you never know what you'll stumble across by being experimental as well. So I hope those few tips have been helpful. It wasn't what I was planning on doing today, but you work with what you've got, and I've had a good time. I've enjoyed my morning. I'd much rather be doing this than being at work today. Although I am going to be paying for it for the rest of the week. I'm going to have a lot of catching up to do. But that is one of the advantages of being self-employed, is that I can just do this sort of thing if I want to. and deal with it later down the line. Does also mean I've just completely missed out on a day's wages today, but I'm kind of used to that from when I'm ill and stuff. No sick pay, no holiday pay. So what's a day spent doing photography when that's the case? If you have enjoyed it, please give the video a thumbs up. Let other people know that people like my content. That's a really helpful thing. And if you enjoy learning about photography and getting these sorts of tips, especially when using affordable gear, then please do subscribe if you want to as well. I'd love to have you along on the journey and hopefully be able to teach you a few more things. You never know. If you want to watch the time that I did catch some epic fog, then watch this video here, and I'll see you next time.